The first thing people notice about the University of Connecticut School of Law is our beautiful Gothic campus. Because we have many buildings, we have wonderful indoor and outdoor spaces, giving us the feel of a small liberal arts college. Yet these spacious surroundings are located in the center of a vibrant metropolitan area, Hartford, Connecticut, which is also the capital of the state. This location provides our students with exciting opportunities for access to the state legislature, the state courts, both the Supreme Court and the appellate courts, the governor's office, and the Attorney General's office, and all the things you'd expect at the seat of government. You may wonder why I talk about teaching in a video celebrating faculty scholarship. Anyone who has ever stood in front of a classroom understands that to clearly explain things to people, you have to think them through on your own first. And there's no better way to do that than to put your ideas on paper, whether it's in a book, a scholarly article, even an op-ed piece. All these forums encourage authors to consider alternative perspectives and to be prepared to engage with opposing points of view. Our faculty have the added experience of traveling around the country and around the world, engaging with other scholars and testing their ideas in open debate. So by the time they return to campus, they know just how they want to present their ideas to the students. And our students have the joy of seeing faculty members who are excited about their work and eager to make a contribution to public understanding. That's why celebrating teaching and faculty scholarship go hand in hand. We are very proud of our faculty's productivity and the names of the publishers on the cover of the books. But what really excites us are the ideas inside, and that's why we are celebrating the year of the book. So Stephen Wilf is the best read person I've ever met. I once actually traveled with him to a conference where we interviewed 30 people in a span of 2 days, and for each of the 30 people, he had read something recently about the work that they were doing. He's conscientious, he takes ideas very seriously, and he is passionate about making his teaching better, and he's particularly interested lately in the history of intellectual property. That's what he writes about. But his earlier book, the one that we're celebrating now, is a book about how newspapers and popular discussion of law during the period of the American Revolution was at least important to the fundamental changes of our country as constitutional law.
Just as in any good murder mystery, a good murder mystery will take you to where the bodies are located. Some of the most arresting images, some of the most intriguing stories, some of the most discussed, and really that's the important question, the most discussed aspects of law are criminal law, then in the end of the 18th century as today. And in addition to criminal law being a form of governance, it is also critically a place that leaves traces. It's hard to imagine just how difficult it is to reconstruct the past. We don't really have a past, we have fragments of a past, little shards of a past. We have to put them together in some fashion or another. And so the more pieces that one has, the more of these broken shards that one has, the more one can put them together to create some kind of coherent narrative in order to understand our present better. And so criminal law has left more shards than any other area of law, and that's the other reason why I chose criminal law for the book. It's not any specific interest in criminal law, it's a much broader interest in what law is all about.
So in the book, Stephen engages with three distinct bodies of scholarship, as he says in the introduction. First, the social history of crime and punishment, so discussions about crime, obviously, punishment, deterrence, retribution, the rise of prisons, all very much in play in this period of the late 18th century and getting into the early 19th century. Second, insights of the law and literature movement, and specifically comparative analyses of texts and intertextuality. And finally, the new cultural legal history. And here I think the best example is the really, really rich and endlessly helpful and creative way that he frames law as imagined before it is constructed. So this is an 18th century version, I think, of what Lisa McGurr, a historian at Harvard, has called the social history of politics, although this is in her work on a very different period, the Reagan Revolution of the 1980s. But this idea that we could bring together social history, political history, and legal history, previously, I think, for many years seen as antithetical or having different bases or underlying commitments, to get a really very textured account of what's actually going on, both on the ground and in the books of law in this period. So first themes, these three themes. The first theme that I think really comes out in this book in a very interesting way is what Stephen terms law as the lingua franca of 18th century America. And this is the idea that in a funny way seems natural to all of us. I think it seems especially natural if you're a law professor, and really very extremely natural if you're a constitutional law professor, which is that everyone in the late 18th century was going around talking about law all the time, and people cared about law. And I think to us that seems like, what else could they have been talking about? But of course, lots of other things. Or they could have talked about things that we would see as legal in non-legal ways. But here we have a really convincing and persuasive account of the pervasiveness of law in their understanding. So broad swaths of the American population were engaged in what we would now recognize as talking about law. And this is very important, they viewed themselves as talking about law. So this is not only a post hoc kind of analytical move here. This is actually saying this is what people at the time understood themselves to be doing.